They were the epitome of the 80s hair metal scene. They had it all, and then it was gone. The charismatic frontman, the driving bassist, thundering drums and a flashy lead guitarist. The only things bigger than the egos were the hair and substance abuse. They were on the cusp of superstardom when their frontman Don Dokken pulled the plug. The classic Dokken lineup would be formed by frontman Don Dokken in 1981, after he signed a recording contract with Carrere Records, Germany. It would be his surname that would lend itself to the group's name, and he would form the band after he had a somewhat successful tour in Germany in 1979, touring under the moniker Dokken. Before he formed Dokken, he would be in a band called Airborne with Juan Pucia and Bobby Blotzer of Rat fame. Airborne folded after Pucia and Blotzer left to form Firefox, and another band called Airborne got the recording contract. Joining him in 1981 would be guitarist George Lynch, an up-and-coming young shredder from LA. That started making name for himself around about the time Randy Rhoads and Eddie Van Halen were becoming famous. On the drum set would be Mick Brown, and to round it all off he recruited bass guitarist Jeff Pilson, who took over bass guitar duties after Pucia rejoined and left again just before the release of their debut album in 1983. Both Brown and Lynch were former members of Exciter. Recorded between July and September 1981 at Studio Stommel, Breaking the Chains was initially released under the name Don Dokken, before it was changed to simply Dokken on subsequent pressings. Promotional activities for the European release of Breaking the Chains included a German TV appearance as Dokken performed a 40-minute live set on the Boot Club as part of a music-laden extra which aired on January 4, 1982. Back in the United States, Dokken were now managed by Cliff Bernstein, who got the band signed to Elektra Records for a stateside release of Breaking the Chains, remixed for the American market. The band did an arena tour in the US, supporting Blues to Cult in 1983. But when the tour was over, the band was left with little money and was nearly dropped from the label due to the album's lack of success. While the band was very popular in Europe during this time, they had not yet made commercial progress in the United States. Their sophomore album Tooth and Nail was released on September 13, 1984. The album contained several hit songs including Just Got Lucky, Alone Again, and Into the Fire, and sold over 1 million copies in the US alone, while selling another estimated 1 million copies worldwide. Lynch, with his distinctive playing style and tiger-striped guitars, was a MTV guitar god, and he signed endorsement deals with Randall Amplifiers and ESP Guitars. On November 9, 1985, the band's third album Under Lock and Key was released. It also sold over 1 million copies with the singles In My Dreams, The Hunter, and It's Not Love. During this time, Dokken opened for such bands as Judas Priest, Aerosmith, Dio and Kiss, among others. However, with money and fame came the trappings of the rockstar lifestyle. All of the members were either drinking heavily or using drugs, and the excesses were starting to take their toll. Both Dokken and Lynch were notoriously difficult to work with, and cracks were starting to appear. Arguments about songwriting royalties were common, and the two main antagonists were usually Lynch and Dokken. Things deteriorated so badly that Dokken would not come into the studio for recording sessions and would only go to the studio after the rest of the band had finished for the day. Following a successful tour with Scorpions, Dokken returned to the studio in December 1986 to record Dream Warriors, a song for the movie soundtrack A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. The track brought the band to the attention of many UK hard rock fans. The song was released as a single on February 10, 1987. After this release, the band took nearly 6 months off before recording Back for the Attack. The album was released on November 27, 1987, with the singles Burning Like a Flame, Heaven Sent, and Prisoner making the album the band's most successful release, reaching number 13 on US charts. It also included a remixed version of the single, Dream Warriors, and the accompanying music video featured band members interacting with the film's characters. Back for the Attack became Dokken's third record to reach platinum status. After releasing Back for the Attack, the band toured as part of the Monsters of Rock tour along with Van Halen, Scorpions and Kingdom Come among others. Recordings from their April 1988 tour in Japan led to the release of the live album Beast from the East on November 16, 1988, which went gold in the United States and charted at number 33. The album scored one studio single, titled Walk Away, and a music video was made for it. By the end of the Monsters of Rock tour, it was clear that the end was near for Dokken. Constant fights over royalties, substance abuse and life on the road were taking their toll. Dokken broke up in March 1989 due to creative differences between George Lynch and Don Dokken. The fact that Dokken wanted to fire the rest of the band and start from scratch with a new band before negotiating a new contract did not go down well with the rest of the band when it became known. Lynch and Brown would form Lynch Mob and subsequently released two critically acclaimed albums, namely Wicked Sensation in 1990 and Lynch Mob in 1992. Don Dokken would release a solo album titled Up From the Ashes in 1990. Jeff Pilson would go on to form Flesh and Blood and sang on the subsequent album. He also toured with MSG. In 1991, Dokken would start work on another solo album in 1993 titled Dysfunctional. A&R executive John Kalodner, however, convinced him to issue the album as a Dokken album and to get back together with Lynch and the other members of the band. Dokken and Lynch agreed to put their differences aside for a while, but during the subsequent tour old tensions surfaced again. Carrere Records dropped the band 4 days after Lynch walked out of the studio and refused to return during the recording of a live performance in support of the album. The old animosities would surface again when Dokken would express his dissatisfaction with 1997's Shadow Live, where all aspects of production was controlled by Lynch. Subsequently, Lynch was fired again in late 1997. Guitarist John Norum of Europe fame was brought in to finish the tour. Lynch tried to rejoin the band but was told that he was out by the rest of the band. This led to a lawsuit being filed against the rest of the band for $1 million. At the conclusion of the European leg of the tour, Norum left and Reb Beach of Winger fame was recruited to finish the tour. Beach would be a member of Dokken until 2000 and would record Erase the Slate in 1999 with the band before departing. Since then, Dokken has released Long Way Home in 2002, Hell to Pay in 2004, Lightning Strikes Again in 2008, Broken Bones in 2012. All these albums were either recorded with John Norum or John Levin on guitar. The classic lineup would appear on stage for a tour of Japan in 2016 and one concert in the US. However, both Dokken and Lynch were adamant that this was a once-off event and that the classic lineup would never reunite. Mick Brown would announce his retirement in 2019, and of late Don Dokken has had several health scares. Jeff Pilson is a member of Foreigner and George Lynch had been working on various projects. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.